All right, everyone, welcome back into another props video. Going to be breaking down my top prop bets here for week 8. It is early, going to be touching on those early edges that we are getting. Then on Saturday, I also will be releasing my top prop bets as well. That could change, but right now I think we're getting some good early edges. So let's go ahead and get into it. And so we are going to somewhat go game by game here, guys, breaking down my favorite prop bets in each game, but not going to be touching on every single part of each game. So I do want to start off with this first game. We got the Atlanta Falcons versus the Miami Dolphins. We know that the Dolphins give up a lot of production to opposing running backs. We are going to see that the Falcons are going to be 7.5 point favorites in this game. That could actually hinder the ability for some of the bets I'm going to recommend to hit. So I like the idea of getting to Bijan Robinson for over 89.5 rush yards, guys. On average, the Miami Dolphins are giving up 128 rush yards per game to opposing running backs. Now, we do know that Tyler Algier can be a little bit involved, and also the game could get out of hand early. The nice part about the Atlanta Falcons is they have used Bijan Robinson in very logical ways, taking advantage of the good matchups that they have. When it's been a good rush opportunity, they've been able to rush him pretty well. When it's been a game in which he is going to get involved in the pass game, that's the better way to attack a defense. They have done that. And so it's quite clear the best route to attack the Miami Dolphins is via the run game. And so Robinson, I do expect to have a pretty massive game. Another player that I like in this game is going to be Kyle Pitts. He also draws a pretty good matchup here going against the Miami Dolphins. Now, I have been hesitant to bet on him with Darnell Mooney back, but we actually saw him have his best game of the year last week with Darnell Mooney on the field. Okay, Kyle Pitts ended up getting 10 targets in that game, 7 receptions, 62 receiving yards. If you don't like the over 4.5 receptions, you could end up going with the receiving yards. Breaking down the Miami Dolphins stats, they've given up an average of 5.8 receptions to opposing tight ends, but they've also given up an average of 64.3 receiving yards to opposing tight ends as well. So again, this is the way you attack their defense, the Miami Dolphins. Now, the worry is that they are 7.5 point favorites. They probably won't need to throw the football that much. And if you guys agree with that assessment of that game, where you think that the Miami Dolphins are actually going to be playing from behind, then you could be looking at some overs here for Malik Washington. And part of the appeal with Malik Washington is the fact that Darren Waller is going to be out in this game. We know that. And so although Tanner Conner, the tight end for the Miami Dolphins, is going to be a pass-catching tight end, I'd probably want to bet on him to get over 1.5 receptions. I think we're going to end up wanting to bet on Malik Washington to get over his receptions. The standard bet that's out there across the industry is him to get over 3.5 receptions, and that ends up being a bet that I like. There's no reason for Prize Picks to currently have this bet as a goblin at 2.5. They should have it as a line at 3.5. I do like this over, though. This ends up being a good bet. So Malik Washington, guys, ended up really benefiting the most, I think, with Waller off the field. Ended up getting a team high 8 targets, ended up having an 80% route share as well. And it makes sense. We saw this last year. Jonnu Smith actually hurt Washington a decent amount. And then we also saw in this last game with Darren Waller getting injured, with Tyreek Hill thought that Washington was the player that directly benefited as well. Don't be surprised if maybe Devon Achane is used a little bit more in the passing game as well with some design plays, but Washington is a player that makes sense in the spot. Which, I don't know if you guys saw this quote from Tua. He basically called out the reason why he sucked thus far this year and about the concerns that everyone had about him being a draft pick. He can't see. And so when you can't see, you're just going to throw it to the short routes, which is Malik Washington, rather than downfield, apparently. And that is, I think, why throughout his career, we've seen a lot of short routes designed to Tyreek Hill or downfield targets. Why would you admit that to Tua Tagovailoa? Because all the concerns about you on film this year have literally come from you just not being able to see players wide open. My goodness, buddy. That is just terrible to admit that. Anyways, let's go ahead and jump on into the next game. So I do kind of like attacking DeAndre Swift in this game going against the Baltimore Ravens. This is a pretty good matchup for opposing running backs. We do know that, but just in general, it's a good spot for opposing running backs. So it might not necessarily be rushing the football. It could end up being receiving yards wise as well, but it really just depends on how you see this game going. So it is worth calling out, guys, that the Ravens are going to be 6.5 point favorites in this game. It is projected to be a pretty high scoring game though there. And so that's what I wanted to call out. If they are going to be winning by that much, Swift could be counted on to get some work in the passing game. I do think they're discounting just how good this Bears offense has looked. Ben Johnson's been doing a great job. Now, I know a lot of people are going to say, well, it might be Kyle Monangai, the guy that you've been hyping up the whole season, guys, or Eric, the guy you've been hyping up the whole season, Eric. What about him? What are your thoughts? Isn't he going to potentially get more work in this game? Maybe. They did end up getting closer to like a 60-40 split in the last game. But I do think it's worth calling out that the carries that Monangai got, a lot of them came in the last quarter. So the last drive. Prior to that, Swift had gotten 17 carries compared to Monangai's 9. Okay, so prior to that last drive, we saw Swift just kind of dominate. That being said, it definitely does feel like a two-headed monster, which I think is ultimately what Ben Johnson wanted. And all the hype that I had around Kyle Monangai for you guys, I think we finally saw that on film last week where he got a decent workload and looked really good doing it. Another good matchup as well. I probably could see betting on some of his overs as well, especially if you don't like the overs for Swift. Like if the rush yards for Kyle Monangai are like 25.5, I probably would want to bet on that over. And I'm doing that because that's basically cutting the ones in half there from Swift, something like that. You could potentially bet on Swift over his rush receive yards as well. Again, this is an spot to attack the Baltimore Ravens team. Actually, all of it is. They're still banged up, but this would probably be the best one I would want to get to. Now, I do want to call it, we're not really getting any anytime touchdowns for the Baltimore Ravens, but I do think we would want to bet on them in some capacity. Zay Flowers to score. I think that ends up being a decent bet. The Bears have given up a ton of production to opposing receivers, especially catching the football for touchdowns. Okay, so I think that ends up being a good spot to attack, and you also have Lamar Jackson back, and I just think Zay Flowers is due for a bigger game, so that's probably my favorite anytime touchdown bet in that game, and just in general, not a terrible way to attack the slate. So now I want to go ahead and talk about the Carolina Panthers running back. So Rico Dowdle continues to look better than Chuba Hubbard now. Chuba Hubbard has not looked great thus far this season, and Rico Dowdle definitely looked better than him last week. The issue that we have here is it does not seem like Dave Canales wants to turn to Rico as the RB1. It really should be Rico RB1, Chuba Hubbard coming in to just supplement Rico at this point. I understand Chuba's the captain of the squad. You don't necessarily want to do that to a player like that. And if you're winning games, kind of, oh well. We did see Chuba Hubbard get 54% of the snaps. That's probably going to continue based off of the things that we have heard. But it is a decent spot here against the Buffalo Bills, and it is probably a spot that we should be targeting one of the running backs. So if you like Chuba Hubbard instead, if you think he's going to continue to see the majority of the snaps, him over 46.5 rush yards would not be terrible. They did mention that he was a little bit banged up in that game, so if you think that's part of the reason as to why he's going to be more healthy here, could bet on his over. But I did want to call out those. That does seem low. One of those seem low. Talent-wise, it should be Rico. Playing time-wise, probably Chuba Hubbard. And then I want to talk about the Buffalo Bills, guys. So reports are coming out that they are looking to add a potential receiver at the trade deadline because, of course, they are. That being said, one player that has really kind of stepped up into a bigger role with them not acquiring a receiver has been Dalton Kincaid. So assuming they don't do that, and why would they at this point of the week, right? He's not going to play even if they do. Dalton Kincaid is probably the top pass catcher that we should be targeting here for the Buffalo Bills, and he does draw a pretty decent matchup in this game. So I do like Dalton Kincaid to get over 37.5 receiving yards in this game. So first and foremost, the matchup with the Carolina Panthers is good. They give up an average of 67.9 receiving yards to opposing tight ends. The nice part about Dalton Kincaid is when he's on the field, he's playing out of the slot 55% of the time, which is obviously going to lead to him getting the work that he has gotten thus far for the Bills. He also has a 65% route share as well. The issue is he's only playing like 48% of the snaps, and that is an issue for us. That being said, this is clearly how you target the Panthers, is with the tight end. Dawson Knox, more of a blocking tight end, so I do think Dalton Kincaid could end up still being kind of the top pass catcher there for the Bills, and if that continues, he should be in for a good spot here. So, kind of more of a secondary bet here. All the bets have basically been secondary bets here, guys. There's 3 that I really like that I'll touch on throughout this video. Those will be in the bet of the day. And if you want to attach any of these other bets, you could use those to make it like a 6 bet if you guys are betting on Prize Picks or anything like that. But I did want to call that one out. Seemingly good bet. That'd probably be the 4th one I would include on the bet slip. Now let's go ahead and jump on into this next game, guys. We got the Bengals here going up against the Jets, and the Bengals are going to be 6.5-point favorites in this game, which is kind of funny given the fact that they were pretty terrible up until basically the second half against the Green Bay Packers, and then looked offensively pretty darn good, I would say, after the first 2 drives or so. Now, part of the reason as to why I would assume that the Bengals are going to be heavy favorites in this game is, well, 1, the Jets offense has been terrible, but 2, Sauce Gardner is likely out for the Jets with a concussion, which could skew some of the data I'm about to show you guys here, because I have mentioned a bunch thus far this year already that the way to attack the New York Jets defense has been with the number 2 pass catcher. Okay, whether it's been a tight end or a receiver, you guys can kind of choose some of the spots there, but either way, the number 2 pass catcher has done well. So on average, 5.3 per game, receptions per game, almost 67 receiving yards, and averaging 0.6 touchdowns per game. So if you look at some of the players on this list, I mean, Calvin Austin having a big game, like that clearly is a good thing there. Dalton Kincaid, not the biggest sample there. Emeka Buka had a good game. You could consider James Cook for this game as well. He went off there. Emeka Buka had a good game. Jalen Waddle, good stuff there. Jake Ferguson, really good. Evan Ingram, very good. And then Xavier Legette last week, very good there as well. And so obviously, guys, the Cincinnati Bengals have a very good number 2 in T. Higgins. And I want to show you guys the difference in the lines that we're getting for T. Higgins and Jamar Chase. So guys, for T. Higgins, we're getting his line on average here at like 4.5 receptions, basically across all the sports books, okay? Which I think is fair. I think that's correct. I do like the over. This would not be a bet that I recommend on Prize Picks or Underdogs because, well, it still has a 51%, almost 52% chance for the over to hit. So you'd be better off using that bet somewhere else where you're going to get rewarded for that risk. And then Chase, let's talk about Jamar Chase. His receptions is at 7.5, and this actually ends up being a pretty good bet. Seemingly on Prize Picks or Underdog right now, it probably will get bumped because that's just what they do now. Instantly bump anything that has a favorable edge for sports bettors. But that being said, kind of crazy that it is this high, but let's just take a peek at some of his data from the last 2 weeks with Joe Flacco. So over the last 2 games there with Joe Flacco and even Jake Browning, but over the last 2 games, guys, obviously targeted heavily, 23 and 12 targets, which is obviously crazy. 10 receptions in the first game and then 16 receptions there in the last game. So that ends up being pretty good. We do come to the slight worry, though, if we're betting on both of these players to get their overs, it is a game where they are heavy favorites. Okay, and you guys know I've been saying for really since week 2 that Chase Brown should get some more work and via the rushing game, which you could say I was wrong last week. That's fine, but his prop line is at 14.5 rush attempts. Okay, he has not gotten that since week 2, which was a game that they ended up winning. And so if they are win this game by a decent amount, it probably would end up being actually a pretty good edge for him to get over 14.5 rush attempts. I just don't want to bet on it. Okay, I don't fully trust Joe Flacco just yet. Okay, great offense. Don't get me wrong. You look really great on Thursday Night Football. Still, the offensive line still worries me a little bit. And maybe the Jets having Tyrod Taylor as a quarterback is actually a slight improvement, especially in regards to just field position, where he's going to make, I would say, overall smarter plays on the field. But overall, I just want to call that out. Kind of an interesting line there for Jamar Chase. Now we go ahead and get into a very interesting game here, guys. It's going to be the Houston Texans going up against the San Francisco 49ers. And in this game, I think we are getting some pretty darn good reception prop bets, okay? So let's go ahead and start off with calling out really why we're getting some good spots here. So as of right now, Christian Kirk is still not practicing for the Houston Texans. So I'm kind of assuming that he's going to end up sitting. And then you also have Nico Collins, who I'm assuming is going to be out as well with a concussion. That leaves their top 2 pass catchers to not play in this game. So who does that leave as kind of the beneficiaries from that? Well, we saw in the last game, the player that got the most snaps directly with Nico Collins getting injured was Xavier Hutchinson. And if you look at some of the lines that we're getting for him, they are extremely low. Okay, so he only ended up with 1 catch in that game. I know that was terrible. But he had a 93% snap share when Nico Collins left, 4 targets, and had 80 air yards, which is obviously a lot. Now, they were playing from behind. I get that. He was clearly the receiver number 2 behind Nico in that game as well. I would expect him to get the same amount of snaps, and if he's getting that amount of snaps, I would expect him to get a decent amount of targets, get enough targets to get this over. It's just whether or not CJ Stroud is going to get him the football. It is a game that's projected to stay close as well, so it's not like we're going to get the negative game script benefit for us where we know that the Texans are going to have to throw the football more. But Woody Marks does draw a more difficult matchup rushing the football, and so I do think we want to be targeting players more in the passing game. Now, I do want to call out Jalen Noel looked good. He looked good. It's tough to imagine him not getting a decent amount of snaps. Okay, guys, so in the game, he only ended up getting 45% of the snaps as a whole. But once Nico Collins left, he ended up getting 68% of the snaps, had 95 air yards, 4 targets, was able to turn that into 2 catches for 43 yards. So looked good doing that. Overall in the game, he ended up with 4 catches on 7 targets for 77 receiving yards. Now, Xavier Hutchinson ended up with 4 targets as well, but I did want to call that out. Jaden Higgins as well ended up playing 65% of the snaps. He had an 89% snap share with Nico going out. And so he's kind of going to fall into the Xavier Hutchinson role. We'll see if that ends up being a good thing for him. Overall in the day, though, he only had 3 targets, 0 catches, so a little bit concerning there. So that leads us with the player that probably is going to be the safest option for us to bet on, and that's going to be Dalton Schultz to get over 4.5 receptions. This is a bet that I liked in the last game. And it's a bet that I'm going to like in this game as well. So this one is a plus EV bet. So Prize Picks is not going to give it to us as a standard bet. So if you guys are some of that bets there, probably not a good bet. But BetMGM Hard Rock bet, I would agree, probably 54% likely for him to get this over. But it would be a bet that I would want to target there. Okay, guys, so in that game, he ended up getting 10 targets, okay, but he has been someone that has been consistently getting over 5 receptions, especially in those games with Christian Kirk out. So now, guys, 4 straight games with him getting the over. We like that there. He probably will be one of the top pass catchers as target-wise for sure for CJ Stroud in this game. So with Nico going out, he saw 5 targets, had 4 catches for 28 yards. So very good stuff there. But I think one of my favorite bets is actually looking at Woody Marks in this game. So I do still think that this is a little bit game script dependent, guys. He ended up playing 61% of the snaps last week. Ended up scoring a touchdown as well in the receiving game. We like that. 5 targets, 3 receptions on 20 yards. Not the best day rushing the football, and I do worry that can end up being the case here again against the Niners. But the way you attack the Niners is throwing the football. They've given up the 5th most receptions to opposing running backs at 5.1 on average per game. His reception line on Prize Picks is set at 2.5, which, again, if you think the Niners are going to win this game, which they should, George Kittle, one more game, healthy, maybe Brock Purdy's back. I think that ends up being a good thing. You might get Ricky Pearsall back as well. Just overall, the offense is getting healthier, and so I kind of think the Niners are going to win this game. But the overall way you attack this team is by throwing the football to the running back. That is a weakness that they have. And if we look at the books, guys, they're giving us this as about a 51% likelihood for the over to hit, which overall is a bet that I do like. The fact that we're being able to, or being told to bet on the over, that ends up being a good thing for us. So that is the first bet that I'm going out of my way to target on this slate. And then there's another bet that I think could end up being a sneaky good bet for us as well. It's going to be another reception bet, and that's going to be in the Philadelphia game against the Giants. So not every book is giving us lines for this game yet, and it is a game in which the Eagles are about 7.5-point favorites in this game. Not the highest scoring game as well, 44 points, but this is a spot where we knew to attack it last week, guys. Just reception-wise with Courtland Sutton, we saw kind of why. They have just given up a bunch of receptions to opposing receivers, guys. Second most in the league, an average of 4.8 per receiver. On top of that, A.J. Brown has been limited in practice over the last two days. Sorry, correction. He has missed the last 2 practices with a hamstring injury. So maybe he does end up sitting in this game. If he does, obviously that would end up benefiting Devonta Smith a decent amount. Someone that, target-wise, you would expect him to get peppered with targets. Over the last 3 weeks, we have seen that happen. He's gotten the over of 5.5 receptions only 3 times thus far this season. But again, that is how you attack the Giants. Give up a lot of receptions. And obviously, if A.J. Brown's out, that would benefit Devonta Smith a decent amount there. Not a bet that we have available on Prize Picks or Underdog just yet. You guys saw we're only getting 2 lines for this bet thus far, but if you guys are someone that has access to those books, I wanted to call that out. A very heavy likelihood for him to get the under. Okay, they're giving him like a 59% likelihood for the under to hit there. So that kind of tells me that the standard line for that is probably going to be 5 receptions or 4.5 with the over heavily favored. Just be on the lookout for that. I would be probably bet on him over 4.5 receptions if A.J. Brown's active, just in general there. And then, guys, we're going to jump into the Bucs versus the Saints game, and I just want to talk about the pass catchers for the Bucs. Okay, this is kind of a difficult spot to tell you guys exactly what to do because of how banged up they are, but there's a chance where we could be betting on like over their standard lines for all of them. I think Sterling Shepard over 3.5 receptions is a bet that I like. I could see betting on him to get over 4.5 receptions as well. It really just depends on the snaps that he gets, and he should be in for more snaps in this game. with obviously Chris Godwin being out still, and then Mike Evans being out as well. So we did see Sterling Shepard get 71% of the snaps after Mike Evans ended up leaving that game. Overall in the game, he ended up with 64% of the snaps, has 70% route share, ended up with 7 targets, and converting those all into receptions. Now, that line is a little bit more difficult. His standard line is set at 3.5 across the industry. I would like that over bet. I think that ends up being a good bet. The player that obviously broke out in the last game was Tez Johnson. We're seeing his line is at 3.5 receptions with the under pretty heavily favorited. But I do think there's a good chance that he could even end up getting that over there as well. So we ended up getting 9 targets in the last game, guys, 4 receptions, 58 receiving yards. Now, I do want to call it the worry is that the Bucs are still favorites in this game, 4-point favorites. It is casually a shootout, about 47 total points in this game. So we do like that there. If it becomes a game where they're having to throw the football, Tez Johnson over 3.5 receptions is a good bet there as well. Emeka Egbuka, guys, ended up getting 12 targets in that game, 10 after Mike Evans ended up leaving the game, 158 air yards as well. I think I'd be fine betting on him to get over 5.5 receptions as well. That's the issue is I think one, the production is going to be more spread out, but we're getting kind of low lines for everyone. Now, a lot of people are going to tell you to bet on Cade Otton to get his over. Obviously, right now, 4.5 receptions, probably not. 3.5 receptions, yeah, I wouldn't want to bet on his over. 9 targets in the last game, 7 receptions, 65 receiving yards. Now, obviously, they were playing from behind in that game, so it was a much more pass-heavy script. But I did want to spend some time on those players because it does seem like it's going to be those 4 that are going to be heavily targeted in this game. And if it's going to be a close enough game as well, like Vegas is telling us, then we probably should be looking at some of the overs. Don't mind Rachaad White as well, but if we're looking at it, probably going Tez Johnson over 3.5, Emeka Egbuka over 5.5, Sterling Shepard over 3.5 as well. Those would be the bets I would want to get to. And now we jump into probably my favorite bet of the week again, guys, and that's going to be Courtland Sutton to get over 4.5 receptions again. So I've mentioned this a bunch already this year. This has kind of been his standard line, it seems like. His 4.5 receptions did not work out against the Jets. But other than that, has been pretty darn solid besides week 1. He draws a great matchup this week as well. Second best matchup overall for opposing receivers, not exactly for receiving or receptions. Okay, they actually give up a low reception total, but that's just, they're getting gouged on big plays overall, the Dallas Cowboys. We know that the only player that we can truly trust out of the Broncos offense has been Courtland Sutton. Now, there's another player that I'll mention here in just a second that I do think we can somewhat trust, but snap share-wise, it has been Courtland Sutton. He is clearly the receiver number 1 for Bo Nix, and they are scheming plays for him as well, which is, if we can get 2 manufactured touches, that is huge. And it is worth calling out, guys, with Courtland Sutton, it's a 51% chance for the over. So that ends up being a good bet for us there. Hopefully, PrizePicks does not turn that into a goblin. Same thing here with Evan Ingram. I like him to get over 3.5 receptions in this game here as well. So first and foremost, guys, I should call it very high-scoring game, 50.7 points, on average for this game. So could end up being a more pass-heavy script. The Broncos are 3.5-point favorites, kind of a well there. And my goodness, guys, they did. They turned this into a goblin already. Jeez, that's super annoying. Super annoying that they did that. Because it only has a 51.2% chance to do that. I could see 53%, but that's kind of crazy to me. If it doesn't change the outcome of your bet, I would say still bet on him to get over 3.5. Sometimes that happens with goblin bets, but he has gotten the over in 4 straight games, okay? That is something that we like. He is getting a 70% route share as well, which we do like. The issue with him is he's only playing about 50% of the snaps as a whole, but when he's on the field, he is getting targets, and he is also someone that has been getting some manufactured touches as well. So overall, I do like Evan Ingram in this game. Very annoying here that they did this. This is my 5th favorite bet, though, on the slate, him over 3.5 receptions. Now we get into another spot that I think is going to end up being pretty darn huge, guys, and that's going to be with the Tennessee Titans. That sounds weird to say, but I do think it ends up being true here. So Van Jefferson, another bet that they have turned into a goblin after I got done doing my research. Very frustrating there, but I do like him to get over 2.5 receptions. I made a note of this because DK is also at 2.5 receptions, and we'll touch on that in just a second, but we'll give you guys a breakdown here. So on average, guys, Indy is giving up the most receptions to opposing receivers, on average about 5.1 per receiver as well. We saw Van Jefferson have a 85% snap share last game, which is right in line with what he had in the last game there with Calvin Ridley out. We are expecting Calvin Ridley to sit in this game again. It's going to be a pass-heavy script again for the Titans. I end up liking Van Jefferson over 2.5 receptions a lot in this game. Now, I will say the one concern, only 4 targets in that game. Okay, so if I probably wouldn't get to him over 3.5 receptions, but again, it is a good matchup. We do want to be targeting that matchup. Another player that, I continue to think he's, with Calvin Ridley struggling, you could make the argument that their best receiver is DK, and I know that sounds like a hot take, but he's looked good returning the football punt-wise for them. But also, when he gets the football in his hands, he looks good as well. End up with a touchdown in the last game, guys. Only 4 targets again, 4 receptions, 70 yards receiving. DK only played 64% of the routes, had a 57% total snap share as well. So we don't like that there as well. The question is, has he played himself into more playing time? And then on top of that, will he just get more playing time here with Tyler Lockett being out? I actually could see them run out a little bit more 12 personnel where Gunnar Helm, the tight end, is getting some more work in the passing game. But that is significant that Tyler Lockett's out. But guys, like Vegas is giving DK a 57% likelihood to get his over here of 2.5 receptions, whereas Van Jefferson about a 50% likelihood. So yeah, kind of strange there. Again, I like it. If they're not changing our payout, we're still betting on it, but a little bit annoying there. And then I do want to talk about the Packers against the Steelers real quick. I do think there's kind of a stacking opportunity for the Packers pass catchers. They get a good matchup here against the Steelers. You had the revenge game narrative for Aaron Rodgers, although I don't really see it that way. He has actually said that he doesn't view it as a revenge game. He kind of sees it as somewhat of a sweet moment, he kind of mentioned, which I would agree with. It's fun for us Packers fans getting Aaron Rodgers back. We want to win, of course, but kind of fun. It should be a Jordan Love game where the Steelers have struggled to stop the pass. So I wouldn't mind Jordan Love over 1.5 passing touchdowns. Josh Jacobs ended getting 2 red zone touchdowns last week. Just need to get one of those to go to Jordan Love, and he ends up with 2 passing touchdowns last week, which could easily end up happening here. Not as good of a matchup for him, Jacobs, as it is for Jordan Love in this matchup. So I like that. And then like Matthew Golden, his reception line seems pretty darn low to me at 3.5, especially with the under as heavily favored as it is. That'd be an overbet that I end up liking. So right away in the game last week, he got a few plays designed to him. Now, the rest of the game, he did not get that much work. But again, in a game where you clearly are going to attack this defense with your receivers and pass catchers, that ends up being a good spot. And then it is worth calling out, guys, Romeo Doubs as well. I like him to get over 4.5 receptions as well. The under is heavily favored here as well. I don't fully understand either of these lines. Maybe they're expecting Christian Watson to come back in this game. But if Christian Watson comes back in this game, he's probably going to get the 41% of the snaps that Malik Heath ended up getting last week. So that's kind of what I'm expecting. And just on average, guys, talking about the snaps, Dobbs, 89% of the snaps last week. Matthew Golden, 75%. If they're going to continue to get that, I like that a bunch. And then it is worth calling out Tucker Kraft. I mean, he's just a stud. If you want to bet on him to get over 4.5 receptions, I wouldn't blame you there. And then real quickly, for those people that are specifically playing on PrizePicks, let's just call some of the top prop bets that we are getting right now. Dallas Goedert for under his fantasy score. I probably would stay away from that one just in case we do get news that AJ Brown is actually going to be out. Ted McMillan for under his fantasy score. I guess I would see the appeal of that with Jalen Coker being back and Xavier Legette kind of emerging. And again, that is going to be a game where you do end up rushing the football a little bit more. I would not do Devonta Smith for under his fantasy score. Definitely not. Again, I like his over a little bit more, but you saw his under 5.5 receptions was a heavy favorite. So that's probably why that is there. But that's kind of it in terms of good prop bets that we're currently getting for fantasy score and just in general for the NFL. So guys, we're going to go ahead and get into the 9 to 5 bet of the day. But before we do that, I want to remind you guys of the 9 to 5 membership. If you guys would like access to any of the tools that you saw throughout this video, head on over to the pricings and plans tab. Get access to all the tools available on the website for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. That will give you access to all the fantasy golf tools, all the NFL tools, and all the NBA tools for DFS and also prop betting and betting as well. Now getting to the bet of the day, guys. Again, doing a 3-slip bet here for you guys, but there are plenty others that I mentioned that I like throughout this video. So by all means, if you guys like those bets as well, feel free to place those. Feel pretty comfortable about this 3-slip bet. Very much annoyed that this got turned into a goblin as I was going to record this video. Oh well, can't control that. And that's going to do it for this video, guys. Appreciate you being here. Like the video, subscribe to the channel as well. Hit that notification bell so you're not missing out on any of the top coverage. Again, if you guys would like access to any of the tools that you saw throughout this video, head on over to 9to5sports.com. Get access to them all for a low monthly cost of $10 a month. Appreciate you being here. Good luck. And as always, let's keep cashing.